Cameron, can I tell you what I came home, got home about 8:30 in the morning, took a 2 hour nap, and when I woke up, my email had blown up because at that point the HHS budget got leaked, and it had a leak in it that said they were going to return all domestic inspections for manufactured foods over to the States. So
I
you
had
can
seen that.
it was an entertaining day for sure. And then promptly started with a conversation with many of our media friends out there. So it was definitely an adventure.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're the guy they come to, right? I mean, if and there's been a lot more than normal of those types of rumors or this is happening, no, we take it back kind of thing.
Uh, and it was, and who knows whether how serious folks are. I mean, there's been lots of conversations about this, particularly over the last couple years. I think, GAO came out with a very interesting report about inspectional cost for FDA, and let's just say it's significant. And, I'll give you one example. A routine low risk manufactured food inspection for FDA domestically is 16,000 plus dollars. A state is currently being paid by FDA $1,500.
What?
So
There's a 10x delta.
you are correct. It's a little less than high risk. It's about 4,500 to about 26,000. So not quite 10, but still significant and high risk. So, huge cost savings potential there from the announcement. I think the key was the nuance wasn't quite in the language that came from OMB, and I think they were expecting a plan would give them the nuance. We can't quite eliminate domestic inspections. I can say that out loud from the federal level. That doesn't quite make sense,
No.
but the right guardrails, we can make that a very small percentage of domestic inspections. And I'll give you two examples of what we can't do. We really can't eliminate those very challenging, unique facilities. So high risk, infant formula
Yeah.
probably should not be turned over to the states. And I say that because there's just not enough of them for them to have proficiency level, and they're so unique. There are other places that it makes some sense. Plus, there are probably some of our states that don't have manufactured food programs that probably shouldn't have manufactured programs. The inventory just doesn't support having that discipline. That's okay. But can we do, 90 plus percent of the work? Yes. We've done this model in produce. I would argue it's been highly effective and really at a very low cost. I mean, we implemented a produce program at the state level for under $25 million for a non-existent program. We could not have done that at the federal level and accomplished we couldn't have done that in a decade at the federal level, much less done it for that price
Yeah,
tag.
money aside, the time value, it's
Mhm.
not possible. So is it more of it's time for a little bit of a realignment of who does what, how you think of that as opposed to, and do you get the sense that maybe there are people out there that want to, but do you get the sense that even federal partners, they're not looking to cut and run? They're dealing with a lot of change and upheaval themselves, and it's more complicated than just saying Fed's bad, uh, states are screwed. Like it's a lot more nuanced than
It,
that.
it is. And I think, when we first start, our federal partners aren't used to this conversation that we at the state and local level are used to. Every year, we go through these budget exercises of what happens if you get a 2, 5, 10, 17, 20% reduction in your budget, probably having to answer all of those questions. And then at the same time, maybe what if you got 2, 5, or 10% more? We're used to doing that. I will be honest, when I talked to many of my federal colleagues, they had never done that exercise in their whole career in the federal government. So they
Wow.
were used to that concept of, well, what do you mean? So they didn't have priorities, or they didn't, I always knew these are the 3 to 5 things I would cut if it had bad budget times that perhaps had less public health impact, would be the way I would put it. And then I always had a list of things. What would I do if you gave me more money? How can I be more effective by having more money? What could I do that really has big impact and would be good for for the consumers of when I was running a program in Iowa? Just that was just the way we worked. And I always had a list of things. Hey, if I could find a grant, here are some things that I want to fund on the back of my list, along with kind of my list of what statutory changes, if I have an opportunity, do I want? What ones, we just got to be very organized about that because there were unique opportunities that would come up and you had very little time to make them happen. So when you
Yes.
had them happen, you had to be ready.
So
And
not much different than a business, right? Like it's what's
no,
interesting is the federal government does not run like a business. I guess
no,
if businesses could print money, they wouldn't either. Um,
well,
but
maybe true.
but states do. States have to choose in their governing.
Mhm.
And you made a good point. The good directors at the state level, they have a if money presents itself, what do I want list? And if things get ugly, what can I live without, even if I'd rather not list, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to. And the other piece of that is, also taking advantage. If you're going to open up a chapter in the law, what things do I need? How do I make something that's maybe not a bill that I like so that I get some wins out of that bill and make it the best possible thing that will work? And regretfully, a lot of state agencies don't let the programs get as involved as they probably need to be effective at what they do. It's kind of pretty disappointing overall that they don't. But those that do, you see much more effective ability to get what they need from the legislature, work with the constituents, work with their stakeholders, and just ultimately have a much better public health program.
So
Um, uh,
you mentioned there's some that do, some that don't. For ones that don't, but they'd like to get on that path, what do you tell somebody that comes to you and says, "Steve, help me. How do I get from the habits and the posture we're in now to the one you just described?"
I think one of the things is really having some of those frank conversations with your leadership, helping them understand that this is important and we need, for us to be effective, we need to not have the filter because often if you have someone that does all of the legislative work and tries to translate it, the translation is never perfect and often has some gaps in it. It just doesn't work real well. The other thing that I would say is figure out a way to engage your stakeholders because if you engage them, they will fight your battle for you and you don't even have to necessarily be there. I will tell you, when I started in the program I ran, our industry relationship was challenged. The first time I met the director of the state restaurant association, it was a 45-minute screaming at me experience.
Wow, screaming.
Screaming. I mean, all 45 minutes of it were. Within 2 years, we were at the point where we had an interactive relationship where we talked regularly. And it was just a matter of beginning that conversation and understanding, oh, this is what you're mad about. I can fix that. That it was something that didn't matter to me one bit. It was a tiny revenue. It was like $40,000 of revenue, maybe a year, and like point 10 or like 10% of an FTE. I was like, I'm done. If that makes you happy for me not to do that, done. Out the door. And
Isn't it
seriously,
always great when the ask that makes them actually
it
happy is
was.
something you're willing to give up?
And we really found that changed our relationship. I mean, so of course, like most programs, we were struggling for funds. We were perpetually having a hard time getting fee increases and those sort of things. We got to the point where we could have a very real conversation with the industry, across all of them, whether it be consumers, or whether it be the consumers, the grocers, the convenience stores, or the restaurants, and really got to a point where we had a great understanding of, okay, how do we fund a program that is effective for all of us and gets what we need, which is ultimately a good public health program that hopefully prevents illness. They wanted that. We wanted that. They wanted quick pre-openings and things like that. So, knowing what their priority was, that helped me figure out how do I structure and appropriately put priorities that they have. But we got to a point where we had a kind of a gentleman's agreement. Every 3 to 5 years, we're going to have to increase fees. It's probably going to be about 33%. They didn't want it annually in inflation index because I'll be honest, when you're in those industries, a lot of your equipment is inflation indexed. A lot of your rents or leases are inflation indexed. And that's just a really hard topic for them. They don't love it. And frankly, there are times when you actually do have a greater bargaining power with your dollar. We haven't seen those lately, but
No,
those
we
happen.
haven't. So
But
you actually just proved that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't want
no,
to
no,
cut you
no.
off.
Well, I would say spending that time with them, and every year, the best meeting I did was I did a round of meetings and I took my boss, the director of an agency, a gubernatorial appointment. We went and did this set of stakeholder discussions before the legislative session. So we openly said, here are the things that we're looking at. here are what we're hearing that's coming. What are you thinking about? And that was the most valuable 2 hours with each one of those groups we had. And from that point on, we started talking regularly. Anytime a bill was introduced, there was a conversation. What do you think about that? How should we jointly work together on it? And that was just our norm. It was a change, complete change. And like sometimes they were the first ones to see it. Sometimes I was, and back and forth. And we had that unique conversation. And always appeared together at hearings, normally with an aligned position, which, you don't often see. But we had that great relationship. They'd call and say, this is what we're thinking. What are we missing? Back and forth. It works so much better than the alternative when we started was we were always disagreeing and yelling at each other and never could be effective. And this really was a much better use of all of our resources. And we all got a win-win out of it.